I stood at my kitchen window in my modest two-bedroom house in suburban Ohio, watching a black sedan pull into my driveway 3 days after Tyler's wedding. Amanda stepped out, followed by a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. My hand trembled as I gripped my coffee cup. I thought back to my decision at the wedding to keep quiet about the $53 million Gerald left me 6 months ago. That silence might have just saved my life. The doorbell rang with an aggressive insistence that made my stomach clench. I set down my coffee and walked slowly to the front door, trying to calm my racing heart. Through the peephole, I could see Amanda's face. But it wasn't the sweet, smiling bride from 3 days ago. Her expression was cold, calculating, almost cruel. I opened the door. Amanda didn't greet me. She didn't smile. She just stepped inside without invitation, and the man in the suit followed her. The scent of his expensive cologne filled my small entryway. "Rosalind," Amanda said, her voice flat and businesslike. "This is Carl Henderson. He's an attorney." Carl extended his hand, but there was no warmth in the gesture. I shook it briefly, feeling the cool, dry grip of someone who spent his days handling documents rather than people. "Mrs. Patterson, we need to discuss a serious matter," Carl said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. He handed me a stack of papers. "These are legal documents regarding your financial competency." My fingers went numb as I took the papers. The words swam before my eyes. Petition for emergency guardianship, diminished capacity, financial exploitation risk. "What is this?" I managed to whisper. Amanda crossed her arms. "Tyler told me about the inheritance during our honeymoon. We're concerned about you, Rosalind. You've been hiding assets, and frankly, you're showing signs that you can't manage this kind of money." Carl opened another folder, spreading photographs across my coffee table. Pictures of my house, my 12-year-old sedan in the driveway, my simple cotton dresses hanging in my closet. "No mentally competent person would live this way while sitting on $53 million, he said matter-of-factly. "This is classic hoarding disorder, combined with financial incompetence. You need help." I stared at the photos, feeling violated. Someone had been in my home, photographing my life, turning my modest choices into evidence against me. "These images demonstrate a clear disconnect from reality," Carl continued. "We have a petition for emergency guardianship ready to file with the court. Multiple witnesses have expressed concern about your declining mental state." Amanda stepped closer, her voice taking on a syrupy, false sweetness. "We just want to help you. Tyler is worried sick about his mother living alone in this condition. We think it's best if you move into assisted living where people can care for you properly." "I don't need assisted living," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." Carl pulled out more papers. "Then perhaps you can explain why you haven't accessed any of the inheritance, why you're living like a pauper, why you're driving a car that should have been retired years ago. These are not the actions of a rational person." "Gerald wanted me to wait," I started to explain, but Amanda cut me off. "Gerald is dead," she said sharply. "You need to face reality, Rosalind. We're filing this petition tomorrow morning unless you agree to voluntary financial management. Sign these papers giving Tyler and me power of attorney, and we can handle everything quietly. No court, no public embarrassment." I looked down at the power of attorney documents. Signing them would give Tyler and Amanda complete control over every dollar Gerald left me. "I need time to think about this," I said carefully, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Amanda's mask slipped. Her eyes flashed with anger, her mouth twisting into something ugly. "You have until tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. If we don't hear from you, we file the petition, and trust me, you won't like how that turns out." I asked them to leave. Carl packed up his materials with theatrical slowness, making sure I understood the threat. Amanda paused at the door, looking back at me with undisguised contempt before walking out. After they left, I sank onto my sofa, the papers scattered around me. My mind raced back to 6 months ago, to the morning I got the call that Gerald had collapsed at his office. Heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. Gerald had been a quiet, frugal man. We'd lived comfortably, but simply in this same house for 37 years. He'd built a software company back in the 1980s, working long hours, pouring everything into creating something valuable. He sold it 15 years ago for what I thought was a decent sum. We paid off the house, put money away for retirement, helped Tyler with college. But I had no idea how much Gerald had really made until his attorney, Howard, read the will, $53 million. I'd nearly fainted in Howard's office. Gerald's will came with a letter, handwritten, sealed. Howard gave it to me privately. I can still remember every word. My dearest Rosalind, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably in shock about the money. I kept the full amount from you because I wanted us to live normally, without the weight of wealth changing who we are. Now I'm asking you to do something that might seem strange. Don't tell anyone about this inheritance for 1 year, not even Tyler. I want you to see how people treat you when they think you're just a widow with a modest life insurance payout. Pay attention to who asks about money, who pressures you, who shows their true character. After 1 year, you'll know who deserves to share in our good fortune. Trust me on this. I love you. Gerald. I'd honored his request. I'd told Tyler. His father left me enough to be comfortable. I didn't mention the specific amount. Tyler seemed satisfied with that answer, busy planning his wedding to Amanda, a woman he'd been dating for only 8 months. Now, sitting in my living room with legal threats scattered around me, I understood. Gerald had been testing Tyler, and Tyler had failed. He must have told Amanda about the inheritance immediately after the wedding, probably even before. They'd been planning this. That evening, my phone rang. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. I answered, hoping maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he'd called to apologize for Amanda's aggressive behavior. "Mom, what the hell is wrong with you?" His voice was sharp, angry. No greeting, no warmth. "Tyler, we need to talk about this calmly." "Calmly? You've been lying to me for 6 months. You let me think Dad left you practically nothing while you're sitting on a fortune. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel?" I tried to keep my voice steady. Your father had specific wishes about how to handle the inheritance. I was following his instructions. His instructions? Tyler laughed bitterly. Dad's dead. His instructions don't matter anymore. What matters is that you've been keeping secrets from your own son. Amanda's right. You're not thinking clearly. This whole thing proves it. Tyler, please listen to me. Your father wanted me to wait 1 year before telling anyone. He had good reasons. Good reasons? What possible good reason could there be for lying to me? I'm your son. I have a right to know about family finances. You have a right? I repeated, stunned by his sense of entitlement. Tyler, this is my inheritance, not yours. The silence on the other end of the line felt dangerous. When Tyler spoke again, his voice was cold. Let me tell you something, Mom. I've been waiting my whole life for my inheritance. I have debts. Amanda and I want to buy a house. We deserve to live comfortably. But you're sitting in that dump of a house, driving that piece of junk car, acting like a crazy person. Amanda's right. You need help. Amanda told you to say that. Amanda is smart about money, which is more than I can say for you. She understands how wealth works. She convinced me we could get access to the inheritance faster if we work together. My heart broke a little more with each word. So you married her because she's smart about money? I married her for a lot of reasons, and yeah, that's one of them. She comes from a family that understands how to manage wealth. Her brother's a lawyer. They know how these things work. Her brother Carl. Yeah, Carl. He's done this kind of thing before. He knows how to help families when elderly parents start losing their grip on reality. I haven't lost my grip on reality, Tyler. I'm 65 years old, not 90. I'm in perfect health. I manage my own bills, my own life. Then sign the power of attorney papers. If you're so competent, prove it by making smart decisions. Let us help you invest the money properly, buy you a nicer place, set you up comfortably. And what happens to the money after that? Another dangerous silence. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. If I give you and Amanda control of my finances, what happens to the money? We manage it responsibly. We make sure you're taken care of. And yeah, maybe Amanda and I benefit too. Maybe we use some of it to build our lives. Is that so wrong? I'm your only child. That money should be mine eventually anyway. Eventually, I repeated softly. After I'm dead. I didn't mean it like that. Don't twist my words. But he had meant it like that. I could hear it in his voice. To Tyler, I was an obstacle standing between him and $53 million. If you don't cooperate, we're filing the guardianship petition tomorrow, Tyler continued. And I'll testify, Mom. I'll tell the judge everything. How you've been acting paranoid since Dad died. How you call me in the middle of the night sometimes, confused. How you forgot to pay your electric bill last month. How you gave money to that guy who came to the door selling magazines. None of that was true, but I realized Tyler didn't care about truth. He cared about winning. I'll tell them you're not safe alone, he went on, that you need professional care. And you know what? I'll win, because judges see this stuff all the time. Elderly widows who can't handle their finances. They'll give me guardianship, and then everything will be managed properly. By you and Amanda. By people who actually understand money. Yes. I closed my eyes, tears sliding down my cheeks. I raised you better than this. You raised me to be a fool, living in that tiny house, pretending we didn't have money when Dad was loaded. Well, I'm done being a fool. Sign the papers by 9 tomorrow, or we go to court. He hung up. I sat in the darkness of my living room, the phone still in my hand. Where had I gone wrong? I looked at the photos on the mantel. Tyler as a baby, as a little boy, graduating high school, graduating college. At what point had that sweet child turned into this angry, greedy man? I called my best friend Patricia. She answered on the second ring. Rosalind? What's wrong? You sound terrible. I told her everything. The lawyers, the threats, Tyler's phone call. Patricia lived 2 hours away, but I could hear her moving around, probably getting her keys. I'm coming over, she said. It's late. I don't care. You shouldn't be alone right now. But Rosalind, listen to me. This is serious. Guardianship cases can be devastating. If they win, you lose control of everything. Your money, your home, your medical decisions, your freedom. They could literally decide where you live, what you eat, who you see. I know. You need a lawyer. A good one. Someone who specializes in elder law and guardianship defense. I'll call Howard in the morning. He handled Gerald's estate. Where is he now? His office said he's out of the country for 2 weeks. Some kind of legal conference in London. They said he's unreachable. No cell service where he's staying. Patricia swore. That's convenient timing. Tyler probably knew Howard was gone. That's why they're moving now. I hadn't thought of that, but she was right. Tyler knew Howard was the family attorney. He'd timed this perfectly. I'll be there in 2 hours, Patricia said. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't sign anything. We'll figure this out. After we hung up, I tried calling Tyler back, thinking maybe I could reason with him. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. He'd blocked my number. I drove to Tyler's apartment, a 15-minute trip through quiet suburban streets. I knocked on his door. I could hear voices inside, hear Tyler and Amanda talking, even laughing, but they wouldn't answer. I knocked again, calling Tyler's name. The door to the next apartment opened, and a young woman peered out. They told me to tell anyone who came looking that they're not home, she said sympathetically. Sorry. I drove back to my house, feeling more alone than I had since Gerald died. The next morning, a man in a suit rang my doorbell at 8 o'clock. Patricia, who'd arrived late the night before and slept on my sofa, answered the door while I was in the shower. Legal documents for Rosalind Patterson, the process server said, handing Patricia a thick envelope. By the time I came downstairs, Patricia had spread the papers across my kitchen table. Her face was pale. "They filed it," she said. "The guardianship petition. Court date is 10 days from now." I sat down, my legs suddenly weak, and started reading. The document was worse than I'd imagined. The petition included sworn statements from Tyler, Amanda, and 3 other people. Dorothy, my neighbor from 2 doors down. Frank, the pharmacist at my local drugstore. Susan, who'd been cutting my hair for 15 years. Dorothy's statement claimed I'd accused her of stealing my mail multiple times. I'd never said any such thing. We barely spoke beyond polite hellos. Frank's statement said I'd come into the pharmacy 3 times in the past month, unable to remember what medications I was supposed to pick up, confused and disoriented. I'd had no trouble at the pharmacy. I picked up my blood pressure medication once a month like clockwork. Susan's statement was the cruelest. She claimed I'd come to the salon on 3 consecutive days last week, wearing the same clothes, unwashed, with matted hair, asking for appointments I'd already kept. I hadn't been to the salon in 6 weeks. I'd canceled my last appointment because I had a cold. "It's all lies," I whispered. "I know," Patricia said, "but it looks convincing on paper. They have 3 seemingly unrelated people, all saying the same thing, that they've noticed concerning behavior." The petition also included my bank statements. Seeing them printed there felt like another violation. "How did they get these?" I asked. "Tyler is your son. He probably claimed concern and asked the bank for information. Or Amanda works for Carl. She could have gotten them through legal channels, claiming they're gathering evidence for the guardianship." The statements showed I hadn't spent any of the inheritance money. The account just sat there, earning interest. Carl's petition argued this proved I didn't understand the money's value or how to use it. There was also a medical opinion, a 3-page document from a doctor named Raymond Chen. I'd never heard of him. "I've never met this doctor," I said. "He probably reviewed the so-called evidence and provided an opinion based on that. He says you likely have early-stage dementia or cognitive decline requiring immediate intervention and professional care." I felt sick. They'd built an entire case out of lies, and it looked convincing. "We need a lawyer now," Patricia said. "We can't wait for Howard." I spent the next 2 hours on the phone. The first law firm I called said they couldn't take a case with such a tight timeline. The second specialized in guardianship law, but quoted a fee of $50,000 just to start, with no guarantee of success. The third firm, smaller but with good reviews, agreed to take the case. The attorney, Sharon Walsh, said she could meet with me that afternoon. I wrote a check for the retainer, my hands shaking so badly I could barely sign my name. Over the next 2 days, things got worse. I discovered Amanda had been posting on social media carefully worded messages about how worried she and Tyler were about me, how they were trying to get me help, how difficult it was to watch a loved one decline. She never mentioned guardianship or money, just painted herself as the concerned daughter-in-law. People I'd known for years started looking at me differently at the grocery store, at church. Some avoided eye contact. Others asked with false sympathy how I was feeling, if I was taking care of myself. On the 3rd day, I went to the bank to access some of the inheritance money to pay legal fees. The manager, a man named Richard who'd always been friendly, asked me to wait in his office. He looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Patterson, I need to inform you that there's been an emergency motion filed regarding your accounts. A judge has issued a temporary freeze pending a hearing." "What?" The room seemed to tilt. "They can't do that. The motion claims you're being financially exploited by unknown parties and that your assets need protection until the guardianship hearing. I'm sorry. I can't release any funds from the inheritance account until the court rules." I had $2,000 in my regular checking account. That was it. $53 million sat frozen, untouchable. Sharon, my lawyer, was sympathetic, but worried when I told her. "They're boxing you in. This is a common tactic. Make you look desperate and incompetent while simultaneously cutting off your resources to fight back." Patricia immediately offered to help. "I've got savings. You can borrow whatever you need." I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm insisting. She wrote me a check for $20,000. Pay me back after this nightmare is over. I cried in her arms. My son wanted to take everything from me, and my best friend was the one keeping me afloat. Sharon reviewed the case carefully over the next few days. She interviewed me at length, took notes on every false statement, every lie in the petition. But her expression grew more concerned as we worked. The problem is, they've built a convincing narrative, she explained. 3 witnesses who seem unrelated, all saying similar things. A medical opinion from a doctor. Your unusual financial behavior, living modestly while sitting on millions, they're going to argue you're either mentally incompetent or suffering from some kind of trauma-induced disorder. But it's all false. I believe you. But we need to prove it's false, and we need to do it convincingly. The witnesses have signed sworn statements. If they recant now, they face perjury charges, so they might stick to their stories. The doctor will say he provided his opinion in good faith, based on the evidence presented to him. What about Gerald's letter? That explains everything. Sharon's face fell. Do you have the letter? It's in Gerald's files in my home office. But even as I said it, a terrible realization hit me. Oh no. That night, the night after Amanda and Carl first came to my house, someone had broken in. I'd reported it to the police. My computer was gone. My file cabinet had been rifled through. I ran to my office, Sharon following. We searched through everything. Gerald's letter was gone. All his papers about the inheritance, his instructions, his explanations. Everything that would support my story had been stolen. They took it all, I whispered. Sharon put a hand on my shoulder. This is bad. Without documentation backing up your explanation for not spending the money, it's just your word against their evidence. I called the police department, asking for a copy of the break-in report. When the officer emailed it to Sharon, my stomach sank. The officer had noted in his report that I appeared disoriented and possibly experiencing memory issues when making the report. Tyler and Amanda had been there, had told the officer I was confused, and probably misplaced the items. Every move I make, they're twisting it, I said. That's exactly what they're doing, Sharon agreed. This is a well-planned attack. They knew what they were doing. She sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. Rosalind, I need to be honest with you. This case is going to be very difficult. They have what appears to be solid evidence, multiple witnesses, and they've cut off your financial resources. I'll fight as hard as I can, but you need to consider the possibility that we might lose. What happens if we lose? They get guardianship. That could mean limited conservatorship, where they control your finances, but you retain some personal freedoms. Or it could mean full guardianship, where they control everything. Where you live, who you see, your medical care, all of it. And the money goes under their control, supposedly for your benefit. But once they have access, it's very hard to prove if they're misusing it. I thought of Tyler's voice on the phone. I thought of Amanda's cold eyes. I knew exactly what would happen to that money. Sharon suggested I consider settling. Agree to a limited conservatorship. Let them manage some accounts while I kept control of others. Compromise. If I give them anything, they'll take everything, I said. I know my son, or I thought I did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, the same bed I'd shared with Gerald for 37 years, and stared at the ceiling. My son was trying to take everything from me. My freedom, my money, my dignity. And I was running out of ways to stop him. Patricia refused to go back home. She took leave from her job at the hospital and stayed with me, sleeping on the sofa, making sure I ate, keeping me from falling apart completely. On the 5th day before the hearing, Patricia was on her laptop at my kitchen table, researching. She'd been digging into Amanda's background, Tyler's recent activities, anything that might help. Rosalind, she said slowly, staring at her screen. Come look at this. I walked over. Patricia had found a marriage record. Amanda had been married before, under a different last name. The marriage had ended in divorce 3 years ago. So she was married before. That's not unusual. Look at the divorce filing. Patricia clicked through to court records. The ex-husband had filed for divorce and had included allegations that Amanda attempted to isolate him from his elderly mother, who had money. We spent the next 3 hours searching. Patricia had connections through her work at the hospital, access to databases and records. She found news articles from 5 years ago in another state. A guardianship case where Carl had represented a young woman, trying to gain control of her husband's mother's estate. They'd won. The elderly woman had died 18 months later. The death was ruled natural, but the family members who contested the guardianship later said it was suspicious. "They've done this before," Patricia breathed. We found 2 more similar cases. Carl's name appeared in guardianship proceedings where younger family members, with his legal help, had gained control of elderly relatives' money. In each case, the elderly person died within 2 years. "This is a pattern," I said, feeling cold. Patricia called Tyler's ex-girlfriend, Linda, whose number she'd tracked down through social media. Linda was shocked to hear about the wedding. "Tyler married someone? Already? We just broke up 2 years ago." Patricia explained the situation, and Linda went quiet. Then she started talking. "My father died 2 years ago," Linda said. "Tyler was really supportive at first, kept asking about the estate, about inheritance. When I told him my father left everything to charity, Tyler changed completely. He became distant, irritable. We broke up within a month. I always wondered if he was only with me because he thought I'd inherit money, but I felt horrible thinking that about him." "You weren't wrong," Patricia said gently. Linda shared more. "Tyler had always been obsessed with money, always complained about having to work, always felt entitled to a better lifestyle. He'd resented Rosalind and Gerald for their modest living, convinced they were hiding wealth somewhere." After the call, Patricia kept digging. She found that Amanda had worked as a paralegal in Carl's office for 6 years. This wasn't a random connection. They worked together regularly. "They're running a scheme," Patricia said. "Amanda finds men with wealthy parents. She marries them quickly. Then they go after the inheritance through guardianship. Carl handles the legal side. They've done it multiple times. But how do we prove it?" I asked. "We're working on that. Sharon, my lawyer, reviewed everything Patricia had found. She was impressed, but cautious. This is good information, but much of it's circumstantial. The previous cases were in different states, different circumstances. We'd need to prove a direct pattern, and that's hard. The ex-husband's allegations were never proven. The other cases could be coincidence." "But it's not coincidence," I insisted. "I believe you. But we need evidence that will hold up in court." That afternoon, Dorothy, my neighbor, showed up at my door. She was crying. "I'm so sorry, Rosalind," she sobbed. "Amanda paid me $500 to sign that statement. She said it was just a family disagreement, that you and Tyler were fighting over money, and she needed witness statements. She made it sound harmless. I thought I was helping. But then her brother came to my house yesterday and said if I try to take back what I signed, he'll sue me for perjury. He said I could go to jail." I brought Dorothy inside, gave her tea, let her cry. She admitted everything. The statement was completely false. She'd never seen me act confused or accusatory. "Amanda gave me specific things to say," Dorothy explained. "She told me what to write. Her brother, the lawyer, he typed it up all official, and I signed it. I needed the money. My husband's medical bills are killing us. But I feel awful. You've always been a good neighbor." Sharon interviewed Dorothy, recorded her confession. But Dorothy was terrified of Carl's threats. She wouldn't testify in court. Without her testimony, we couldn't use her recantation. I tried to approach Frank, the pharmacist. He refused to talk to me, looked away when I came into the store. Susan, my hairdresser, did the same. They'd been paid and threatened too, I was certain, but they wouldn't admit it. That night, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. Someone had thrown a rock through my kitchen window. Attached was a note. "Drop the case, or it gets worse." I called the police. They filed a report but said, without witnesses or evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They suggested I install security cameras. The next morning, Sharon called with more bad news. Carl had filed additional motions. He was now claiming I was paranoid, that the break-in I'd reported was probably imagined or self-inflicted, that the rock through my window was either a random act of vandalism or something I'd staged for sympathy. They're twisting everything, I said, exhausted. That's their strategy. Paint you as unstable. Make every legitimate concern seem like paranoia. 2 days before the hearing, my computer, which had been stolen in the break-in, mysteriously reappeared. It was left on my front porch in a box. When I turned it on, all of Gerald's files were gone, erased completely. But the browser history had been altered to show searches for things like how to hide money from family and faking dementia for sympathy and making false police reports. They're planting evidence, Patricia said, horrified. Sharon had the computer examined by a forensic specialist who confirmed the browser history had been manipulated recently, but Carl would argue I'd done the searches and was now trying to cover them up. I felt trapped. Every move I made was used against me. Every defense I mounted was called paranoia. My own son had built a cage around me, and the walls were closing in. The night before the hearing, I sat in Gerald's chair, holding his reading glasses. I was so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being accused, tired of seeing my son's face twisted with greed instead of love. Part of me wanted to give up, sign everything over, let them have it all, just make it stop. Don't you dare, Patricia said, seeing my expression. Gerald left you that money. He wanted you to have it. You fight for it. You fight for yourself. But I wasn't sure I had any fight left. Then I remembered something. When the house had been broken into, they'd taken Gerald's files from the office. But Gerald had been paranoid about identity theft. He'd kept backup copies of important documents, somewhere only he and I knew about. The attic, the hope chest. Patricia and I rushed upstairs. The hope chest had been my grandmother's, passed down to me. It sat in the corner of the attic under old blankets and boxes. We dragged it into the light. The chest had a false bottom, a hidden compartment Gerald had installed years ago. I pressed the concealed latch. The bottom popped up. Inside were files. Copies of everything. Gerald's letter. His instructions about waiting 1 year. His notes about Tyler's character, observations he'd made over the years about our son's growing obsession with money and entitlement. And something else. A thick folder marked private investigation. I opened it, my hands trembling. Gerald had hired a private investigator 6 months before he died. The report was detailed, thorough, devastating. The investigator had documented Tyler's debts, his pattern of dating women from wealthy families, his online search history, showing he'd been researching inheritance laws and guardianship proceedings months before Gerald died. Tyler had even posted in online forums asking how to challenge a will or get early access to inheritance money. Gerald had known. He'd known exactly what kind of person Tyler had become, and he'd tried to protect me. There was also a USB drive. I grabbed my laptop and plugged it in. A video file opened. Gerald's face appeared on screen, and I started crying immediately. He looked so alive, so real. This had been recorded 2 weeks before his death. He was sitting in his office, wearing his favorite blue cardigan. Rosalind, my love, if you're watching this, things have gone wrong somehow. I hoped they wouldn't. I hoped Tyler would prove me wrong about him. But I had to prepare for the worst. Gerald's voice was steady, determined. I've set up protections for you. The inheritance isn't structured the way you think. I didn't leave the money directly to you in a simple inheritance. I created an irrevocable trust. You're the primary beneficiary, but there's an independent trustee at First National Bank in Delaware, a man named Richard Matthews. He has strict instructions. No one but you can authorize distributions. Any attempt by anyone else to gain control triggers an immediate legal defense fund of $1 million to be used for your protection. My heart pounded as Gerald continued. The trust is federal jurisdiction. Any guardianship proceedings filed in state probate court can't touch it. Tyler might not know this. He might think he can get to the money through guardianship. He can't. But more importantly, Rosalind, fight them. Don't let anyone take your freedom. I set up these protections because I love you, and I know you're stronger than you think. Use the defense fund. Hire the best lawyers. Protect yourself. I should have dealt with Tyler's problems while I was alive, but I was too much of a coward. I kept hoping he'd change. He won't. You matter more than his greed. Fight, my love. Win. The video ended. I was sobbing, but for the first time in days I felt hope. Patricia was already on the phone, calling the bank in Delaware. It was past business hours, but she got an emergency number. She explained the situation to the person who answered, gave them my name and Gerald's account information. Within 10 minutes, Richard Matthews himself called me back. Mrs. Patterson, I've been waiting for your call. I'm aware of the guardianship proceedings. I have all the documentation here. The defense fund is ready. I've already retained a top guardianship defense firm. They're standing by for your authorization. Send them immediately, I said. They'll be at your house within 2 hours. And Mrs. Patterson? Your husband was a brilliant man. He set this up perfectly. Tyler and his lawyers have no idea what they're walking into tomorrow. At midnight, 3 lawyers from the firm arrived at my house. Jonathan Cross was the lead attorney, a distinguished man in his 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. His associates, Maria and Kenneth, were younger but equally focused. They reviewed everything. Patricia's research, the private investigator's report, Gerald's video, the trust documents, Dorothy's confession, the pattern of Carl and Amanda's previous schemes. This is excellent, Jonathan said, but we need to move fast. We'll file an emergency motion first thing in the morning before the hearing. We'll present the trust documents, show that the entire guardianship petition is based on false premises. We'll expose the connection between Amanda and Carl, show this is a predatory scheme. We'll demand the judge recuse herself if she has any connection to Carl. The judge? I asked. Carl doesn't file these cases randomly. He picks judges he knows, judges who might be sympathetic. We'll research Judge Brennan tonight. They worked through the night. Patricia made coffee. I dozed in my chair, exhausted, but finally feeling like I had real protection. At 4 a.m, Maria found it. Judge Margaret Brennan's daughter had married one of Carl's former law partners 3 years ago. Photos from the wedding showed Carl in attendance. They weren't strangers. They moved in the same social circles. This is bias, Jonathan said grimly. She should have recused herself immediately. She didn't. That's grounds for appeal at minimum, possibly judicial misconduct. By 6 a.m, they had a complete strategy. They'd walk into that courtroom with evidence Carl and his team never expected. The truth would come out. All of it. I looked at Gerald's photo on the mantel. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for protecting me. The hearing was in 4 hours. One way or another, this nightmare would end today. We arrived at the courthouse at 8:30. Tyler and Amanda were already there with Carl and 2 additional lawyers. When they saw my legal team, 3 lawyers in expensive suits, carrying multiple briefcases, their expressions changed from confidence to confusion. "What's this?" Carl demanded. Jonathan smiled coldly. "We're Mrs. Patterson's legal representation. We'll be filing several motions this morning." We went directly to the clerk's office. Jonathan filed the emergency motion and additional documentation. By 9 o'clock, when the hearing was scheduled to start, Judge Margaret Brennan had a stack of new materials on her bench. She looked flustered, angry. "What is the meaning of this last-minute filing?" Jonathan stood. "Your Honor, we're presenting evidence that fundamentally changes this case. We're also formally requesting your recusal based on your personal relationship with opposing counsel." The courtroom went silent. Carl's face turned red. "That's absurd. I barely know Judge Brennan." "Your Honor, Jonathan continued calmly. We have photographic evidence showing you attended the wedding of Carl Henderson's law partner to your daughter 3 years ago. You've socialized with Mr. Henderson on multiple occasions. This represents a clear conflict of interest that should have been disclosed. Judge Brennan looked like she'd been slapped. That connection is distant and irrelevant to my ability to judge this case fairly. With respect, Your Honor, your behavior throughout these proceedings suggests otherwise. We have transcripts showing an unusual number of objections sustained in favor of Mr. Henderson and against Mrs. Patterson's original counsel. You've allowed questionable evidence while dismissing legitimate concerns. This appears to be bias. A senior judge was called in to review the recusal motion. It took 30 minutes. The senior judge, Thomas Anderson, was in his 70s with a reputation for being scrupulously fair. He reviewed the evidence, looked at Judge Brennan's face, and made his decision. Judge Brennan, I'm granting the recusal motion. Step down. Judge Brennan's hands shook as she gathered her materials and left the bench. Judge Anderson took her place. Now, Judge Anderson said, let's start this properly. Mr. Cross, present your evidence. Jonathan began with the trust documents. He explained in clear, detailed terms that Gerald hadn't left $53 million directly to me. He'd created an irrevocable trust with an independent trustee. Even if guardianship were granted, Tyler and Amanda would have no access to the money. The entire premise of this guardianship petition is false, Jonathan stated. The petitioners claim Mrs. Patterson can't manage her finances, but she doesn't have direct control of the funds anyway. The trust manages them. She's protected by Gerald Patterson's careful estate planning. This isn't a case of incompetence. This is an attempted theft. Carl tried to object, but Judge Anderson silenced him. I want to hear this. Jonathan played Gerald's video. The courtroom watched in complete silence as Gerald explained his protections, his concerns about Tyler, his instructions for me to fight. When it ended, I saw tears on some faces in the courtroom. Judge Anderson's expression was grim. Mr. Henderson, did you know about this trust structure when you filed the petition? Carl stumbled over his words. We were operating on the information provided by our clients. So Tyler Patterson told you his mother had direct control of $53 million? Yes, Your Honor. And you didn't verify that through estate documents? You didn't check the actual structure of the inheritance? Carl had no good answer. Jonathan then called for Dorothy to be brought back to testify. She'd been subpoenaed that morning. She sat in the witness box, terrified. But Jonathan had arranged immunity for her through the district attorney's office. Miss Kellerman, is your previous statement about Mrs. Patterson true? Dorothy's voice shook. No. Amanda Henderson paid me $500 to sign a false statement. She told me what to say. Her brother Carl typed it up. I signed it because I needed the money. But I never saw Mrs. Patterson act confused or accusatory. I lied. I'm so sorry. Carl jumped up. Your Honor, this witness is clearly being coerced. By whom? Judge Anderson asked sharply. Sit down, Mr. Henderson. The pharmacist and hairdresser were called next. Offered immunity, they both broke down and confessed. Amanda had paid them each $500. Carl had given them the exact wording of their statements. None of it was true. The medical expert, the doctor who'd never met me, was questioned via video call. When confronted with the fact that his entire opinion was based on fabricated witness statements, he backpedaled quickly, saying he'd provided his opinion in good faith based on what he'd been told. But if the underlying information was false, his conclusions were invalid. Judge Anderson's expression grew darker with each revelation. Then Jonathan dropped the bomb about Amanda's pregnancy claim. Your Honor, Mrs. Amanda Patterson testified in the previous proceedings that she's 10 weeks pregnant. We request immediate medical verification of this claim. Amanda's lawyer objected. That's invasive and unnecessary. Your Honor, Jonathan countered, the pregnancy claim was central to the emotional appeal of the guardianship petition. If it's false, it demonstrates the extent of deception in this case. Judge Anderson agreed. Mrs. Henderson, you testified under oath about being pregnant. I'm ordering you to submit to a pregnancy test within the next hour, or I'll assume the claim was false. Amanda stood up, her face flushed. This is ridiculous. You can't force me to take a medical test. I'm not forcing you, but if you refuse, I'll draw my own conclusions. And perjury is a serious crime. Amanda looked at Carl. Carl looked at Tyler. Tyler looked panicked. I'm not taking any test, Amanda said. This is harassment. Note for the record that Mrs. Henderson refuses to verify her testimony, Judge Anderson said coldly. I'm assuming the pregnancy claim was false. Amanda stormed out of the courtroom. Tyler started to follow, but Carl grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. Jonathan then presented Patricia's research. The pattern of previous cases. Carl's involvement in multiple suspicious guardianships. The nursing home connections. The elderly victims who died under questionable circumstances. Maria, one of Jonathan's associates, had spent the night tracking financial records. She showed how money had flowed through various accounts after the previous guardianships were granted. Shell companies. Hidden transfers. Carl's wife was on the board of Meadowbrook Senior Living, the facility where 2 previous victims had died. Your Honor, this isn't an isolated case, Jonathan argued. This is a pattern of predatory behavior targeting elderly individuals with money. Carl Henderson and Amanda Henderson have done this before. They identify targets, fabricate evidence of incompetence, gain control through guardianship, and profit from the exploitation. Judge Anderson called for a recess. During the break, I saw Tyler sitting alone on a bench in the hallway. He looked small, defeated. Part of me wanted to go to him, to comfort him like I had when he was a child. But then I remembered his voice on the phone, his threats, his willingness to destroy me for money. When court resumed, Judge Anderson announced that he'd contacted law enforcement. Based on the evidence presented, there's probable cause to investigate criminal fraud, elder abuse conspiracy, and possibly wrongful death in relation to previous cases. Mr. Henderson, you're being detained for questioning. 2 police officers approached Carl. He tried to protest, but they cuffed him and led him away. Tyler Patterson, Judge Anderson continued, you're also being detained. The life insurance policy you took out on your mother, combined with the Meadowbrook facility reservation made in her name, suggests possible conspiracy to harm her. At minimum, you face charges of fraud and attempted financial exploitation. Tyler's face went white. Officers took him away. He looked back at me once, and I saw something in his eyes. Regret? Fear? I wasn't sure. Maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see. Amanda was found trying to leave the courthouse. She was detained as well. Her fake pregnancy claim, combined with her role in orchestrating the witness tampering, made her a flight risk. Judge Anderson formally denied the guardianship petition with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled. Mrs. Patterson appears completely competent. This petition was based entirely on fabricated evidence submitted as part of a criminal scheme. The actual goal was financial exploitation and theft. He then asked if I wanted to make a statement. I stood up slowly. My voice shook at first, but grew stronger. Gerald Patterson was my husband for 37 years. He was a good man, a careful man. He built something valuable and wanted to protect me with it. He knew exactly what kind of person our son had become, and it broke his heart. Tyler chose greed over love. He chose money over his own mother. I'm grateful Gerald protected me, but I'm heartbroken that I needed that protection from my own child. Judge Anderson granted me a protective order against Tyler, Amanda, and Carl. They couldn't contact me or come within 500 feet of my home. Outside the courthouse, news cameras were waiting. The story had broken. Local attorney involved in elder exploitation scheme. I didn't speak to reporters. Jonathan gave a brief statement about elder rights and the importance of protecting vulnerable individuals. In the days following the hearing, the full extent of the conspiracy began to unravel. Law enforcement launched a major investigation. More victims came forward. An elderly man in another state whose daughter had married one of Carl's associates. A widow in a neighboring county who'd been placed in Meadowbrook and barely escaped. The investigation into Meadowbrook revealed financial irregularities, neglect, and evidence of over-medication of patients. The facility was shut down. Families of the two people who died there filed wrongful death lawsuits. Carl faced multiple felony charges across several states: fraud, elder abuse conspiracy, witness tampering, and potentially even being an accessory to wrongful death. His law license was immediately suspended. His wife resigned from Meadowbrook's board amid the scandal. Amanda was charged with fraud, conspiracy, and perjury. The fake pregnancy claim had been a calculated manipulation recorded in court testimony. She faced years in prison. Within a week of her arrest, she filed for divorce from Tyler, blaming him entirely for the scheme. It was a last desperate attempt to save herself. Tyler's situation was complicated. His lawyer argued he'd been manipulated by Amanda and Carl, that he was a victim too. But prosecutors had the evidence. The life insurance policy Tyler had taken out on me without my knowledge. The Meadowbrook reservation in my name. His online search history, going back over a year, researching how to challenge wills, gain guardianships, access inheritances early. Tyler ultimately accepted a plea deal. He pled guilty to attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and insurance fraud. He received 5 years of probation, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order, preventing him from contacting me or coming near my home. I attended his sentencing hearing. He looked thin, broken. His lawyer had him make a statement asking for leniency. "I know what I did was wrong," Tyler said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I let greed cloud my judgment. I hurt the person who loved me most in this world. I destroyed my relationship with my mother for money I didn't even get. I'll regret it for the rest of my life." The judge was not sympathetic. "Mr. Patterson, you didn't just hurt your mother financially. You tried to take her freedom. You were willing to have her declared incompetent, to strip away her autonomy, to potentially imprison her in a facility where previous victims died. That goes beyond greed. That's cruelty." After the hearing, Tyler tried to approach me in the hallway. The bailiff stopped him, reminding him of the restraining order. Tyler stood 15 feet away, tears running down his face. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." I looked at my son, the little boy I'd raised, the man who'd tried to destroy me. Patricia stood beside me, her hand on my arm, ready to support whatever I chose to do. "I loved you more than anything in this world," I said quietly. "But I won't let you destroy me." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. A week later, I met with Richard Matthews, the trustee, at the bank in Delaware. We sat in his office overlooking the river, and he walked me through the complete trust structure. "Your husband was extraordinarily thorough," Richard explained. "You have complete access to the funds for your needs. You can authorize distributions, make investments, support causes you care about. But the trust structure protects you from exactly what just happened. No one can take it from you." "How much did Gerald spend on setting this up?" I asked. "About $200,000 in legal fees. He worked with the best estate planning attorneys in the country. He spent a year designing these protections. $200,000 to protect me from our son," Gerald had known. He'd seen what I couldn't see or didn't want to see. Howard, the family attorney, finally returned from London. He was devastated to hear what had happened while he was gone. "Gerald made me promise to look after you if anything happened to him. I failed." "You didn't fail. Gerald's protections worked exactly as he designed them, and now I know how to use them." Over the next few months, I began to actually engage with the inheritance. I kept my modest house because I loved it, but I made it more comfortable. I replaced the old windows, updated the kitchen, put in a beautiful garden that Gerald always wanted. I bought a reliable new car, nothing fancy, just safe and dependable. I established charitable foundations in Gerald's name. one for college scholarships for students in need, one for small business development, remembering how hard Gerald had worked to build his company, one for elder abuse prevention and legal defense, helping people like me who faced exploitation. I gave Patricia a generous gift, insisting she accept it. Not just repayment of the $20,000 she'd loaned me, but funding for her daughter's medical school tuition. Patricia cried, but she accepted. "You would have done the same for me," she said. I reached out to Linda, Tyler's ex-girlfriend. We met for lunch. She was a kind, thoughtful woman who'd been hurt by my son's manipulation. We became friends. I started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping other elderly people facing financial exploitation. I used my experience to educate people, to warn them about the signs of guardianship schemes, to share what I'd learned. The local news did a follow-up story 6 months later. The reporter asked what I'd learned from everything that happened. "I learned that money doesn't change who people are," I said. "It reveals who they've always been." Gerald knew that. He built his wealth quietly, lived modestly, and taught me that real security isn't in bank accounts. It's in character and wisdom. I'm grateful he protected me, not just with legal documents, but with his love and foresight. Do you ever hear from your son? No. The restraining order is still in effect. Even if it wasn't, I don't know what we'd say to each other. He made his choice. I've made mine. Do you forgive him? I thought about that question for a long time. I'm working on it. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened or allowing him back into my life. It means releasing the anger so it doesn't poison me. I'm not there yet, but maybe someday. A year after the hearing, I sat in my backyard in the early evening, watching fireflies dance over my new garden. Patricia was visiting for the weekend. We'd become even closer through everything that had happened. She was the sister I'd never had. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd told Tyler about the money right away?" Patricia asked. I used to, but I realize now that it wouldn't have changed anything. If I'd told him immediately, he might have come at it differently. But the greed was already there. Amanda would have found another way. Gerald knew that. That's why he built in the waiting period. He was protecting you from the truth about Tyler. No, I said. He was giving me time to see the truth for myself. If he'd just told me Tyler was greedy and untrustworthy, I wouldn't have believed him. I'd have defended Tyler. I needed to discover it on my own. The legal battles had finally ended. Carl was serving a 12-year sentence for elder abuse conspiracy and fraud across multiple states. Amanda got 8 years. Tyler's probation would end in 4 more years, but the criminal record would follow him forever. The Meadowbrook families had won their wrongful death lawsuits. The facility's owners were bankrupt. Some justice had been served, though it couldn't bring back the people who'd died there. I'd learned so much over that terrible year. I'd learned that silence could be wisdom. Gerald's instruction to wait, to say nothing about the inheritance, had seemed strange at first, but it had saved me. If I'd announced the money immediately, if I'd told Tyler and Amanda from the start, they might have been more careful, more subtle. They might have slowly isolated me, manipulated me over months or years. The quick, aggressive attack after the wedding had revealed their true nature before they could fully trap me. I'd learned that strength sometimes means asking for help. Patricia, Sharon, Jonathan, and the whole legal team. Richard the trustee, Howard the family attorney. Dorothy, who'd finally found the courage to recant her false statement despite the risks. I couldn't have survived alone. The American dream isn't about rugged individualism. It's about community, about people standing together against injustice. I'd learned that money reveals character, but doesn't create it. Tyler's greed wasn't caused by the inheritance. It was always there, waiting for opportunity. The money just gave it a target. Some people see wealth as a responsibility. Others see it as something they're owed. I'd learned that love isn't always enough. I loved Tyler with everything I had. I'd sacrificed for him, supported him, believed in him. But my love couldn't change who he chose to be. That was the hardest lesson. Mothers want to believe their love can fix anything, save anyone. Sometimes it can't. Most importantly, I'd learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish. For so long, I'd felt guilty about fighting back against Tyler. He was my son. I was his mother. Shouldn't I sacrifice anything for him? But Gerald's message was clear. My life, my freedom, my dignity mattered. Protecting those things was not only right, it was necessary. The inheritance wasn't a burden anymore. It was a tool for good. The scholarships had already helped 43 students attend college. The Small Business Fund had helped 12 families start companies. The Elder Abuse Prevention Foundation had provided free legal help to over 100 people facing exploitation. Gerald's money was doing exactly what he would have wanted. It was making the world a little better, a little safer, a little more just. I thought about Tyler sometimes, wondered how he was doing. Part of me still hoped he'd genuinely changed, that he'd gotten the counseling he needed, that somewhere inside him was still the little boy who'd loved me. But I knew I'd never find out. The restraining order was permanent. Even after his probation ended, I'd chosen to maintain it. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Patricia squeezed my hand. You did good, Rosalind. You survived. You won. You honored Gerald's memory. I honored myself, I said. That was Gerald's real gift, not the money. The reminder that I mattered, that my life, my choices, my freedom had value. He gave me permission to fight for myself. The fireflies danced in the growing darkness. Somewhere in the house, my phone rang, but I didn't get up to answer it. It could wait. This moment, this peace, this hard-won contentment was more valuable than anything in any bank account. I'd learned the hardest lesson life can teach. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we loved most. Sometimes family betrays us. Sometimes trust is broken beyond repair. But we survive. We adapt. We learn to build new lives from the wreckage of old ones. Gerald had known I was strong enough to do that, even when I didn't know it myself. His protections weren't just legal and financial, they were emotional. He'd given me everything I needed to save myself. I just had to find the courage to use it. The stars came out one by one. Patricia went inside to make tea. I sat alone in the garden Gerald had always wanted, surrounded by beauty we'd created together, protected by love that outlasted death. I was 66 years old. I was a widow. I was a mother to a son I'd never see again. I was a millionaire, living in a modest house. I was a survivor of attempted exploitation. I was a fighter who'd won against terrible odds. I was free, and I was finally, truly at peace. Life is strange sometimes. The inheritance I never asked for, the wealth I'd lived without for 65 years had nearly destroyed me. But in the end, it had revealed truth. About my son, about myself, about what really matters in this world. The money was just money. Love, freedom, dignity, those were the real treasures. And nobody, not even your own child, has the right to take those from you. Gerald knew that. He built his fortune understanding it. He lived modestly because he understood that the best things in life can't be bought. But he also understood that money, used wisely, can protect what's truly precious. I would spend the rest of my life honoring that wisdom. The scholarships, the foundations, the legal aid. Every dollar would be used to help people protect themselves, build their dreams, fight for their freedom. That was Gerald's legacy. Not the money itself, but what we chose to do with it. Not what we accumulated, but what we gave away. Not what we owned, but what we protected. I looked up at the stars and thought of my husband. Thank you, I whispered, for everything, for loving me, for protecting me, for teaching me that I was worth protecting. The fireflies danced, the stars shone. Patricia came back with tea, and I sat in my garden, free and safe and whole, ready for whatever came next. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between protecting yourself and protecting a relationship with someone you love? How did you navigate that impossible decision? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, if it made you think about trust, family, and the courage it takes to stand up for yourself, please consider liking this video and sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people facing real challenges and finding the strength to overcome them. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're stronger than you think, that protecting yourself is never wrong, and that sometimes the hardest victories are the most important ones. Take care of yourselves, stand up for yourselves, and remember, real family protects you, not exploits you. Until next time.